feels to ever have enough time to play at all. You know, everybody wants to walk in someone else's shoes. Everyone's forgotten who they are. Such a grind.
Getting ready to get started on doing some more work in the layout room. You might notice I have gotten nearly all of the carpet laid. I've got a strip there, and then a very skinny strip across the back wall, and then over here, just a little bit left in this corner right here. That shouldn't take me more than a couple hours to do. And then I can start working on the workbench that's going to go over here. You might notice that I have this set up here, which if you watched my last operations video, I know there was a few people that commented on how the sound was good. I kind of cheated, if I guess you could call it that. All of my function sounds I recorded separately into Pro Tools, and then, processed all of those sounds and then added them in later in my video editing portion on top of the actual sounds of the chuff and all that stuff. And then I use two cameras. I've got that camera on a tripod and the one I'm making use of right now also on a tripod. And then, I don't know if anybody's curious or not, but when I do video like this, I have another contraption that I made that allows me to cradle the camera. My iPhone is what I tend to use because the iPhone's just so much easier than this other Canon that I have. And you don't get the rolling shutter that you can on that camera. But I use it, and I try really hard to make sure that all of my video doesn't have all of this going on while I talk. There's a lot of really good railroads out there, a lot of just fantastic railroads that I would love to be able to watch what they do. But unfortunately, I'm extremely sensitive to camera movement, and there's some people's videos that I just absolutely can't watch. I'd love to, but I can't watch it because I will throw up inside of about 3 minutes with all of that extra movement. So I try and make sure that, what I do is slow and methodical and doesn't make people want to throw up just because of my camera movements. That was probably too much information. Now, what I have been looking at, because after I get the carpet laid, I'm gonna begin working on the workbench, which I've mentioned in the few other videos. It's gonna go right over here across this wall. And of course, everything is a mess in here at the moment. I'm going to make use of this, and I've already run into my first problem. When I put these wall sockets in, I figured the countertop being right at 32 inches, which is right about where I wanted it. So I put the plug-ins right at 32 inches. Well, then I purchased this thing, and it's got this 4-inch extension. So if I put that at the bottom of where the plug-ins are, that drives the top of the workbench down another 4.5 inches. And then if I'm using a 2x4 across the bottom, at any rate, I'm talking too much. It ends up putting the top of the workbench someplace where I really don't want it. Because I don't want it at 24 inches off the ground. It's got to be somewhere between 30 and 32 inches, I think, for me to be happy. So what that means is I'm probably going to have to notch out some of this back here, which I really didn't want to do. And I may think about exactly how I'm gonna do that, but I got to figure all that out before I begin building the workbench. And I've been mathing, and I'm not very good at mathing. The basic framework for the workbench is complete. I ended up going right at 32 inches, and I will have to notch the countertop, but it's just the way it's going to have to be. Now, I was able to use the Radial Arm Saw, and if you cared to watch the video kind of on it, you'll notice that I do have a elevation knob, and I have the little red off button. I managed to find those, so that saw is working quite nicely. It still has a few tweaks that I need to do to it to get it just absolutely perfect, but I can tell you that it certainly made making this framework 10 times easier than all this other stuff that I made with this saw bench. It was nice. I really enjoyed what I've done so far. Right now I'm messing around with where exactly to put this center support, because everything to the other side of it there, to the left as you're looking at it now, that will be storage space for, I'm not sure yet, scenery supplies, just overall modeling things. And then my workspace will be here. And I'm toying with the idea of leaving maybe 6 or 8 inches and coming up with another set of legs and having some cubby holes on this side to put away hand tools and things, just as a convenience. So I'm just kind of working through the final stages of the framework before I put the countertop on and slide it into the layout room. I've got the shelves for the workbench put in. I went ahead and left this bottom one here just one long shelf. I didn't run a support crossways, but I did put these two supports in that are pocket hold screws from the top down. I don't think there'll ever be anything really heavy on that, so I think that will be sufficient enough support to work. I've got 2 or 3 of these, I don't know, they're kind of cheap plastic drawers that you can put stuff in. Eventually, I will probably build something there. I don't want drawers, but I do want something that I can take out and maybe move to wherever I'm working at within the layout room. I still haven't completely decided whether or not I'm going to add like a 6-inch shelf over here. It seems like an awful lot of work just for a little shelf, and maybe I'm just over engineering it and I need to think about it a little differently than I am now. One thing that I am also considering is having like a 12-inch or a 13-inch pull-out shelf, just like 3/4 inch MDF, that slides up underneath here and can slide out this way so that you've got extra space to your right, for whatever it is you're working on, besides what's over here. My gunk and junk clutter up the top of that while I'm working on a model, and it would just be nice to have a little extra area to your right to organize things. So that's where I'm at right now. I'll show you more after I've done some more. I've got the handy dandy slide out drawer completed. It works fairly well. What I've done is I've just left a 3/4 inch gap there, which should interface with the top of the tabletop. And there might be just a little too much of a gap across the top of it. I might need to recut something that's just a little bit taller, but I'm gonna leave it alone for now. And in full disclosure, I kind of goofed up on this. I should have cut my notch out of my support beam. I should have cut it there so that I could have run a 2x4 across here instead of manufacturing an extra piece of wood that just kind of overcomplicated things. But I don't know what happened. I marked once, cut once instead of marking once and marking again and looking and looking and looking. But it's gonna work, it's gonna work. Now I'm considering whether or not I want 6 inches of smaller shelves over here, just for like hand tools and things that I don't want to occupy the top of the workbench that I often use. I've got the center shelves completed. You know, I originally thought maybe I'd put them over here, and I got to thinking, you know, I'm right-handed, so why not put everything here? I'm nearly finished, but now that I've got this completed, I'm looking back at this center shelf here, and you might obviously note that everything else is MDF, and that's like 1/2 inch plywood. I didn't have enough of the 3/4 inch MDF to put a full shelf there, at least not without cutting and splicing, and that would have meant I would have had to have a center support going crossways. And now that I'm looking at it, I really dislike that center shelf. So I think I'm gonna mimic what I've done here, and even though I'm gonna lose a little bit of space on that bottom shelf, it'll only be as you put things in. The same height will be for most of the shelf. You'll just kind of have to manipulate things in and underneath. And then eventually I'll have to get another piece of MDF because I still don't have enough to do a full sheet, and I still don't want anything to go across the top, or excuse me, the bottom. Oh, I'm still thinking about that. I'm not, you know, that's very easily removed at this point. And I gotta let my bank account heal a little bit before I buy any more material anyway. So next thing up is to notch out my countertop so that I can get it placed on the bench. There it is, kids. Workbench complete. Notched out the back of the countertop. That was a little easier than I thought it was gonna be. You know, and it doesn't look that great, but it's serviceable. Same thing with this down here. If I were back in the process of making it again, I would definitely do some things different, but I don't want to back up and redo anything because I got lots of stuff to do, and that's gonna work. It's fine. You might notice what's left of the plywood Pacific. My N-scale layout, I think I've got somewhere between 10 and 12 tortoises over there that will be used for the narrow gauge staging over here. Not entirely sure what all I'm going to do next. That being said, let me take you over to the workshop. So this is a complete mess at the moment. So ignore the mess because I have been working. One of the things that, you know, before I get started on bench work for staging, and I've mentioned it in previous videos, is I want to be able to rip a complete sheet of plywood. Over here, I've got plywood. This is going to be the beginning of staging. And that's nice plywood. I think that's $40 a sheet plywood. And you might ask, well, why in the world would you spend $40 a sheet? Well, 1x4s right now are basically $4 a board foot. So, and they're knotty, they're wavy, they're terrible. They're terrible for $4 a board foot. And I think I can make more 1x4s out of a sheet of plywood than I can purchase. I think I'm actually going to save money, but that goes back to my original statement, is I need to be able to rip easily a piece of plywood. And I did some tests, and you can see this burn mark here on that sheet of 1/2-inch plywood that I did for something else, just for testing. So my saw is not completely set up right. And what I've discovered is when I change the elevation, it moves a little bit. If I bump into this table, it might move. That table might move if I bump into a little bit. So what I need to do is go ahead and sheet this wall. And then I want to fasten these tables to the wall so that they're absolutely solid, can't be moved, that kind of thing. And I'm also going to redo the saw, the table. I just think I can do a better job than I did the first time. You know, it's one of those things that once I get it set up right, it should make ripping and sawing a breeze. If I was only ever going to cross cut, I wouldn't be worried about it. But I've got lots of things that I want to rip because I'm also planning on using spline road bed in various different places, and I want to create my own spline out of either 1/8-inch masonite or 1/4-inch masonite. So if you hear the exit music, Dirty Shame, then you know that I have not gotten the wall sheeted by the time that I put up the video. If you don't hear that music, then stand by and you will see at least a partial sheeted wall. All right, without going in any great detail to bore you any further, it looks much the same as it did before. The only difference is I've got plywood. I still have this up here to complete, but I'm not overly concerned about that at this point. The main thing was getting this bench work attached to the wall, and I also put another plug in at this end so I can run my bandsaw over here on this end. I'm good to go with anything with the saw now, so I've got no excuses to start building bench work. Thanks for watching.